On Thursday, the Eagles are in Cleveland to play the Browns preseason game number 3 on Fox, 8 p.m. kickoff. That's the good news. The bad news is that you won't have the opportunity to hear more from Mike Mayock, the analyst on our Eagles broadcast. Hello, everyone. I'm Eagles insider Dave Spadaro, along with Mike Mayock. So we're not going to be there on Thursday to talk about it.
I'm a little bummed about that.
I know. It's always such a good thing going.
It is, especially week 3.
Yeah, I know.
Week 3, we get the starters for at least a half and into the third quarter. And week 3 is always my favorite. And this week, Dave, we're going to watch it on television.
On offense, the starters. Who are the starters?
Good question.
That Doug Peterson's going to play this week.
It's a good question. We're probably going to see. We'll get some Foles, I would imagine.
I don't know.
We don't know yet, but I would imagine.
You put him out there after that scare in New England?
Yeah, I would. If the doctors tell me he's okay. Yeah, I'd put him out there. You talk about tempo and rhythm and timing and those kind of things. They're real, and it kind of gets complicated by the fact that Alshon Jeffrey has not been in camp and Nelson Aguilar has gone down. Mike Wallace got into the mix. I'd like to see some chemistry. I'd like to see him throw some footballs at Zach Ertz because we're going to see a lot of that once the regular season starts. So I think timing, tempo, rhythm are important things, and I hope we see some Foles, and I would imagine we're going to see a lot of Sudfeld again.
For Doug Peterson, what a challenge. One eye on the preseason and developing the best 53.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is kind of just getting everybody ready for September 6th, coming off such a long 2017. It's very difficult.
And people talk about the Super Bowl curse and trying to repeat as champions. It's real. It's not just, we're not working hard. It's a shortened preseason. It's every team in the league taking their shot at you. It's surgeries. You want to talk about medical? Alshon Jeffrey's not getting surgery till when?
Yeah.
Late February. Yeah. Whereas if your season's over January 3rd, you've got 6-8 weeks. Brandon Graham, Timmy Jernigan. All of a sudden, these guys are 6 to 8 weeks behind other NFL players that have had similar surgeries. So I feel horribly for Doug Peterson because he's sitting right there on August 20th, no idea who may or may not be in his lineup week 1, Thursday night against the Atlanta Falcons.
All right, let's talk about these 2 preseason games we've seen, Pittsburgh and New England. Yeah. It has been sloppy football by the Philadelphia Eagles. I know that Doug not happy about that. Yeah. Any cause for concern?
Here's how I look at preseason, and there is some cause for concern because I don't care if you win or lose. Preseason games, winning and losing doesn't matter to me. But it is how you play the game. And what do you want? I've talked to Doug so many times. He talks about clean football. I want to see clean football. What's the definition of? And I played for Bill Belichick. I mean, the New England Patriots turn the football over less than everybody almost every year, right? So what does clean football mean? Number one, it starts with taking care of the football. They didn't do that week 1. Week 1 was bad as far, 4 fumbles on the ground, 2 interceptions, 11 penalties. Yep. So it starts with taking care of the football, and then it's, what kind of penalties are you committing? Are they on special teams, guys pushing from? We're going to see some of that all the time, but last week there were 9 more. So now there's 20 accepted penalties in 2 weeks. This helmet rule and the unnecessary roughness rules, they're difficult for defensive players. They really, really are. And the Eagles, like every other team in the league, have to figure that out.
Mike, the strengths of this football team we expect going into the season, line of scrimmage, really kind of all the way through. What positions do you still feel not quite sure about?
I'm nervous about defensive tackle and wide receiver, okay? And they're injury-based. One of the strengths of this team should be defensive line. But when you take Tim Jernigan and put him over here with back surgery and a big question mark, and then you take Brandon Graham with a big question mark, and now you're saying, uh-oh. So we've got this great depth. What are we doing? Well, that means that Michael Bennett now, which becomes a very important acquisition, he's got to slide in and play more snaps inside, which means that who's now going to take the extra snaps outside, and is Josh Sweat going to be ready to go? So there's really kind of a domino effect with some of these injuries. So the defensive line, which should be their strength, and we know how Jim Schwartz loves that whole rotation thing. I think when you talk about their NASCAR group and, when they're healthy, man, that's awesome. But I'm nervous about the defensive tackle position. Haloti Ngata is 34 years old. He's not quite as athletic and quick as he used to be. Is Destiny Vio ready for significant snaps? And I'm also a little bit worried just because of injuries at the wideout position. I think if you're the Eagles personnel and coaching departments, you're kind of keeping your eye open. Who's getting cut? Who might be available to be traded for?
Wide receivers, I feel like that's a plus in this preseason because Shelton Gibson has seemingly taken that step. Do you believe in him?
You know what? Here's my Shelton Gibson thing. It's hard because last year, I know how fast he is. I know how fast from West Virginia. I watched him catch all the verticals, but I never thought he was a natural catcher of the football. And then you come out here for 2 years in a row, drops, double catches, and I'm thinking, even though he's a tough kid, plays special teams, can run fast, he's not going to make this team. And then in the first 2 preseason games, he comes out here, he separates and catches everything.
Yeah.
He's earned it to this point. Okay, I think he's on the team to this point. He's still got to finish. Okay. He's got 2 more preseason games. The other kid I liked the other night was DeAndre Carter.
Absolutely.
And he showed some ability to run routes and separate and from the inside. And with the uncertainty of Aguilar right now at the slot, this kid's getting some reps. And I thought Greg Ward was going to be that kind of guy.
Hasn't been a factor.
And has not been a factor. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, is this DeAndre Carter. I watched the film over the weekend, and this kid knows how to run routes. Mm-hmm. And I'm anxious to see him more in week 3 and 4.
Why is linebacker not on your list? For me, going into training camp, it was one of the big questions. Jordan Hicks coming back from the Achilles tendon. Who's going to play the weak side? Right. Where's your depth?
Right.
Nobody talks about linebacker.
Well, I think part of it for me is the number of snaps that linebackers are going to get in the regular season because of nickel and dime.
The vanishing linebacker.
It really is. I mean, in the NFL, there's a case of, it depends on who you take off the field in your nickel and dime packages, but the way Jim Schwartz plays defense, for the most part, if Jordan Hicks is healthy, he's going to play every snap. He had 5 interceptions 2 years ago, and last year the linebacker group as a whole had 0. So Jordan Hicks is going to be on the field, and Nigel Bradham knows that defense. So where is Camus Grugier-Hill and Nate Gary going to be? I would tell you this. They're both converted safeties. They both get covered up by big bodies, which is typical with hybrid players. So in the run game, they both get covered up a little bit. Which one of those two is the better against the pass? Can either of those guys match up with tight ends and running backs will dictate how much playing time they get.
In your mind, Mike, nickel cornerback, has Avonte Maddox or Sidney Jones created any separation there?
No. And I keep waiting for Sidney to take that next step, and I'm not sure if it's because he's coming off injury or he's trying to play 2 positions. Yeah. But when I watched him at Washington, he was exclusively an outside corner. And I thought he was very similar to Marcus Peters. Same program in Washington, and I thought their traits that made them special were instincts, number 1, and ball skills, number 2. Now, he's trying to play 2 positions. One, he's played very little in his life at nickel inside. That's a whole folks, if you don't know how different nickel is, trust me. You're inside, you're close to all those big fat boys, your receiver's got a 2-way go, there's no sideline to help you. It is so different playing nickel than it is corner.
Does he have the quickness to do that?
I think he does, but I still see to play his style of game with the instincts and the ball skills, you got to have confidence. And I'm not sure he's 100% there on the confidence side of just being ready to just trust his gut, trust his eyes, which is what I loved at Washington. Man, he trusted his eyes and he went. I think, you talk about Jalen Mills outside and Darby outside. I mean, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Sidney Jones has got to figure in somewhere. And Avonte Maddox is a more natural nickel. He's played it before. He's quicker inside, but he's not as big. So there's pluses and minuses to either, but I just feel like at some point when you start talking about that rotation, it's got to be Darby, Jalen Mills, Sidney Jones, somewhere, somehow.
We started talking about the quarterbacks. Let's finish talking about the quarterbacks. Nate Sudfeld has looked really good. I think everybody would agree. 5 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions, 2 of which can kind of fall on him. I don't think the pass to Matt Jones the other night was on him.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
You're making your read on Sudfeld and the making of another young developmental quarterback.
I'm loving what I'm seeing, and part of it is, his second throw of the preseason was an interception and a bad one, and you're wondering how he's going to come back from that. And he came back pretty well in that game. And then I thought he'd take a big jump against New England. I mean, Philadelphia threw the ball 51 times. Nate threw it over 30 times. His deep ball touch and accuracy. He had 3 balls in that game, which were outstanding. The 17-yard touchdown to Richard Rodgers was crazy good.
Yep. Threw it early.
Patriots had a free runner. He threw him open. The touch, timing, and anticipation on that throw was outstanding. He hit Rashard Davis on a little cover 2 hole shot. Again, safety and corner location had to be perfect. I mean, It's getting better and better. The question here is for me, the make or break mark for a lot of young rookie quarterbacks or a lot of young quarterbacks is pocket awareness. And he had one play in the pocket, and it was just outstanding. He hung in against a 5-man pressure and made a great throw. And the very next throw, his eyes came down, he dropped his hips, and he had that look. And he should have thrown a touchdown pass, but he didn't see number 2 coming open on the crossing route, DeAndre Carter.
Okay.
It was down in the red zone.
Okay.
So my point is, the continued development of Nate Sudfeld for me is continuing to be confident in the pocket. And if he can do that, he's got a potential to be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Let's look 2 weeks down the line here. Do you have any sense? Will it be Nick Foles? Will it be Carson Wentz for the opener? And how many times a day are you asked that question?
Yeah, and neither of us has doctor in front of our names. And to me, and I've said this, and I don't think it's popular on Philadelphia talk radio because they all want to have the, is he going to be there week 1? And my whole thing is, look, and I truly believe this, I think Carson Wentz has the chance to be the best football player in the NFL for the next 10 years. And if that's the case, you got to take the long view for Carson Wentz, which is when your doctors tell you he's ready to go, he's ready to go. But until that point, he's not playing. So if it's week 1, awesome. If it's week 5, awesome. You've got this kid named Nick Foles, who's a pretty good football player right behind him. But when Carson's ready, it's his team.
Isn't it even amazing that 9 months after surgery, an ACL injury, which back in the old days, you're on the shelf for 2 years, you can maybe play in 9 months. It's crazy.
But the amazing thing is it's not just the ACL with him because of the LCL. From what doctors in general have told me, the ACL they're not as worried about 9 months later. It's the LCL that's a little bit longer healing time, and that's the concern.
Well, we'll wait to see when Carson returns to the lineup. In the meantime, the Eagles in Cleveland on Thursday. We're back on the broadcast side with Scott Graham. 2 Thursdays from now. Preseason finale. New York Jets.
Lincoln Financial Thursday
Christian
night.
Hackenberg and Nate Sudfeld. Let's giddy up.
Hey, wait, Sam Darnold. Come on, we got a bunch of stuff.
There's a lot to
look
watch
forward
for that game.
Yeah.
Mike Mayock, Dave Spadaro. Thanks for joining us.